because there's now a new ministry that is again emerging. Actually, it's an old ministry, but it's now re-emerging in the church because of the many needs of the people. And it's the ministry that the Lord Jesus has handed down to us, to the church, which is exorcism. Aside from preaching and healing, He has been doing exorcism. But there were times in the history of the church, we know that the faith was really very much alive and was central in the lives of people, and therefore the need for exorcisms were very minimal. But right now, with the rise in so many cases of not only possession, people getting possessed by the devil, but also being attacked in their minds, we call that possession, attacked in their bodies like oppression, and attacks on places and homes, we call that infestation or haunted houses. Then basically the church has seen again the need to bring about the emergence of this ministry and to train priests on this ministry. On this ministry, especially right now, even Pope Francis has sent a message to all bishops, a circular that they have to have exorcists. Each diocese should have an exorcist, and they should forward the names of their exorcists to the Vatican. And actually, even at the time of Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, they were already calling upon bishops to appoint exorcists for their, we may say, dioceses because of the rise of diabolical attacks, these different types of extraordinary demonic attacks. And therefore, right now we're trying to, in the Philippines, we are trying to now train priests because in the seminary, for the past decades, there was no training in this ministry because there was really, maybe say, there was less need, and also there was the theology, the emphasis on theology moved from demonology and shifted a bit towards, maybe say, maybe psychology and also different other dimensions of our faith. And the demonology was left behind. That's why there are many decades have passed wherein the demonology, the means of exorcism was never discussed. Even angelology was not a subject that was really talked about or discussed. And therefore, many people therefore became did know any more about what was going on in the, about the world of the demons, the angels, and because of that, people entered and tried to experience so many other, maybe say, spiritual experiences and try to encounter other spiritual beings. Like for example, in the Philippines, they try to get in contact with fairies, duende, tawag natin, encanto, we call them elementals, fairies, we call it the term they use abroad, the fairies. And because of that, because of the lack of knowledge, therefore, little by little, people started to bring in a wrong theology about the spirit world. And because once you have a wrong theology and understanding the spirit world, then you open up yourself to diabolical deceptions, and the spirits will usually come in not in the form of demons or fallen angels. They will come in the form of benign beings or even like good beings. Then they enter again into our lives, and then they start to cause problems.
Question, Father.
Yes.
Our group, professional have just finished capacitating the lay community organized and founded by the late Monsignor Fred Rigenbeck, who was the very first exorcist in Cebu. And the topic of digital media was mentioned during an open forum, and so I'd like to know if this is a vehicle that could enter into their lives, especially our young people, and that they may be able to ano ba sila, are they being exposed to this kind of possessions through digital media?
Yeah, now we have many cases now because of digital media. Actually, my first case, when I was still a young priest, a young exorcist, maybe that's around 20 years ago. One of my first cases was a young kid who was, all night in the social media, playing video games. I don't know what type of games, maybe it could be diabolical. Demons were maybe the main characters. And later on, he suddenly started to see demons all around him already. So he was sent to a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist said, this guy is already mentally ill, and therefore he has to be brought to the basement at Makati Med. And this child, grade 4, I think grade 5, was a student of a Catholic school. And it's good the father thought of bringing him also to an exorcist. So they immediately went to San Carlos Seminary, where I was based then. I'm still based there. And I did more or less a diagnostic exorcism over him. Okay? And then he started to shed tears. And the next week was back in class. Okay? So nagulat sila because precisely he's supposed to be a person who has already a mental illness, and he should not already have been able to go back to class. He should already have been placed in the basement, the psychiatric ward. Okay? But immediately he was liberated. So that was one of my first inklings that the demon can really use social media. Now there are more and more cases with regards to the social media, because there are certain sites where when you open, there's a curse that is sent immediately. That means that if I open this certain site and I'm not in the state of grace, I'm not protected by God, because I'm not in the state of grace, then the curse hits the person. It's like a Tagalog kulam or marang. It's a curse that will cause some form of oppression or even obsession. Suddenly the young child starts to suddenly hear voices or see images of black figures, starts to have suicidal tendencies or falls into depression. And even cases of wherein, for example, we deal with haunted houses, and then I asked the parents, did anything happen recently? They can't remember. I said, ask your child, what sites did your child access recently? And usually they are occult or immoral sites, and these attract spirits. And immediately the place can start their paranormal experiences, paranormal manifestations. So right now there are many young people who are becoming even Satanists through the social media. Because we know that the young person is usually very curious, and many times the diabolical will not appear as something that is negative. It will be like something wherein you can experience a lot of benefits, no? Like you can become rich, you can find your soulmate, whatever. No? So they enter into these sites, and then they have to do the rituals, follow the instructions of the rituals, and then there's a pact made with the devil. Actually, one of my cases a few years back was in our seminary. 2 seminarists got possessed, and one of them got possessed because he made a pact with the devil. So basically, he was sick, very sickly. He made a pact with the devil. The next few days later, he was totally healed of his sickness. Then he said, I wanted to learn how to draw because he had no talent in drawing. So he made a pact with the devil. Immediately that night, he was drawing with 2 hands, anime drawings. So immediately he got these powers. But later on, he was afraid because later on, he could not anymore enter the chapel. He couldn't sit anymore in his pew. He had to offer some form of blood offering in order for him to be able to enter into the chapel. And later on, there were blackouts. That means he was already was getting possessed already. He would black out, then he would wake up, he would be already in another place. Those are signs of possession. And I think one of the things that really scared him was that he wanted to knife one of our priests there. So I had to exorcise him, and he was vomiting blood, etc. No? He had to, of course, renounce his pacts with Satan, etc. And I learned that he was asked why he didn't make a pact with Satan, and he said, because in 7 years old, I have never experienced the presence of God in my life. So I asked the mother what happened to him when he was 7 years old. And the mother said, when he was young, he had an open third eye. He could see spirits easily, and he could not sleep. He was always being harassed. Okay? So they went to a faith healer, an albularyo, and then the person did certain rituals over him. So what happened was that he could sleep already, but later on, any kind of consolation in prayer, experience of God in prayer, it was blocked by the devil, the diabolical spirit. Because there is no expulsion of spirits when you're dealing with the devil. The only way to expel a spirit is in the name of Jesus Christ. Only God can expel a spirit. So when you are being harassed by a spirit and you go to an occult practitioner, what he does is he subjugates that lesser spirit with a more powerful spirit. We call that subjugation. That's why if I'm an albularyo, for example, a faith healer, I will first have to check what spirit is harassing that boy. If I see that my spirit that is in me is more powerful than that spirit, then I will handle the case. If not, then I will tell the person, you go to a more powerful albularyo or a more of a powerful faith healer.
Is this actually, Father, a global phenomenon?
Yes, actually, in all cultures in the States, but in the States they call their, for example, they call their occult practitioners, they call them names. Like for example, here we call them spiritistas. There they call them spiritists. Okay? We call them manguhulas. Okay, persons who try to predict the future. Okay? So there they call them fortune tellers. So actually in all cultures you find all of these occult practitioners and even occult practices. Whatever we find in our culture, basically we find in other cultures the names are only different and also the external manifestations to be different. That's why, but in the Old Testament we see that we see that there are witch doctors, there are shamans, there are fortune tellers, there are diviners, there are channelers, there are mediums, there are spiritists, necromancers, there are witches, warlocks, sorcerers. It's all there in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And Moses had to go against them when he tried to get the Egyptians out of Egypt. The Pharaoh had his own occult practitioners who could mimic what Moses was doing. That's why the Pharaoh was obstinate. He didn't allow Israel to live until his gods, the gods that were giving power to his occult practitioners, could not protect his people from the angel of death sent by Yahweh. That's the only time that he said, the God of the Israelites is more powerful than my gods. And therefore natakot na siya. He got afraid and he let Israel go.
Sabi nila, Father, that we live in a great screen age. Kasi palagi na lang tayo
Yeah, and actually, it's really diabolical because when a child is in a screen, basically he enters into a trance state. That means he becomes very open to subliminal messages. So, for example, he sees something that is lustful, okay, immodest image. Immediately, it's imprinted very deep in the psyche, so it's always imprinted. It's very easy. The devil can easily trigger that memory, so that he's always tempted. Because when you look at the child, he's actually in a hypnotic trance. When you're in a hypnotic trance, you're very open to anything subliminal. You become very open to auto-suggestion. So usually that's how possession occurs. The devil puts you into a deep trance. You see a hypnotic trance. The person seems to fall asleep, and then the devil comes in. So the more a person, in a sense, goes into a trance state, then the more nabubuksan yung kanyang third eye, the more he becomes more sensitive to the spirit world and to subliminal messages that the devil can send through the social media. That's why when the person sees maybe advertisements to buy things, immediately the effect is much more intense than if you were to see it in the store or whatever. And the social media, there are three, the jealousy and demoniac, three signs of the devil, according to even to Archbishop Fulton Chin, is this. There is isolation, the person is totally alone. Secondly, a lot of anger, hatred, and lust. And we see that in the jealousy and demoniac, he was naked, he was alone, in chains, and was very angry. And now the three major effects of the social media is we're highly sexualized now. As Our Lady of Fatima said, most of the souls who go to hell are because of sins of the flesh. Secondly, depression and isolation, loneliness, suicide. These are the major issues now of the young. And thirdly, everybody is becoming very hateful, very rude, and very angry at one another. There's so much hatred in the social media because of the way it is made, the algorithms that are in place in the social media, which is to keep a person addicted to it. So whatever will stimulate the emotions more, stimulate the biochemicals that release pleasure, the more they will stay longer in the social media, and that's actually the main goal of the social media.
Can you give some advice, considering we only have like 4 exorcists for the entire Archdiocese of Cebu, and access to this kind of assistance is really very rare or hard to get. I understand even for this conference, when you were asking around, the typical parish priest didn't want to attend because they're sort of scared of the role of exorcist. So what advice could you give for families, lay out there, in this environment which you call faith that could be tainted,
Well, you first to make sure that first and foremost, as I think I spoke very who said that as a parent has the duty to journey with the child, their son or daughter in the real world, they now have a duty to journey with them in the virtual world. That means they cannot simply allow the child to get a gadget and that's it. Parang bahala ka na, or it's up to you, whatever, wherever. They have to also to make sure that just as when we were younger, our parents check our friends. So now the danger is that before our parents more or less, I mean we cannot, if you have a barkada, okay, they can become, maybe they're not that good, but you don't go to extreme behavior because more or less the barkada is still within a certain environment, a certain culture. But now the influence is the entire world. And of course, the young person will not seek out what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true. He will seek out what is stimulating, what piques his curiosity, what is the most extreme, because he wants to take risks, he wants to discover the world. And there, in the social media, there are no boundaries, there's no one checking, there's no censorship. That means you can, whatever you can imagine and fantasize about, it will be there. You'll find it there. So as a young person starts to explore and starts to enter into this world, you will see that little by little, the social media is made so much so that once they see that the child is interested in this, then they will give them more and more extreme type of data or images or more and more extreme content to keep them stuck there. So when they see the child maybe is already he's starting already to maybe lessen his time in this particular application or this particular theme, then the social algorithm will put it again more intense, more extreme, so that the child remains always stuck to whatever is the person was interested in the beginning. And that's why the hard thing there is that unlike in the real world, there are always boundaries. In the social media, there are no boundaries. That means you can go into sites, the dark net, the deep net. You can go to them where you can even watch torture, cannibalism, everything. No? And the sad thing is that they found out, like in the States, children 8 years old, 20% of young children, men and boys and girls, have already seen at 8 years old. 20% of them have seen already sex with torture and sex with animals. So imagine how abnormal that is, and therefore you can imagine already the desires of these young people. It's already abnormal. It's already something that they're drawn already to more extreme. We may say, and young people, they want to experiment. They will experiment, and once they experiment, they're caught in that. That's why they can cause also a lot of problems with homosexuality, because right now they're not anymore saying anything that we may say they're desensitized, okay, regarding that. So they try to experiment because they say it's an alternative lifestyle. So they experiment. Immediately their self-identity, because our self-identity is based on our sexual identity. Once your sexual identity becomes confused because you had experiences with the same sex, then that can already have problems with your identity, with your self-identity in the future, and therefore you start to have a lot of because you don't really feel at ease with yourself. Then you start to feel depressed, isolated, angry with yourself, depressed, suicidal, and all these things come.
Well, parents cannot normally follow their children virtually because they've given the phones. They probably don't even know what apps they're using. So they struggle with that. I think, what advice could you give families who are in that situation? It's too late. They've given the phones. They've given them free rein and they cannot get the phones back or curtail the time unless you want World War II at home. Right?
So actually in the seminary, what they did was, because of the pandemic, the phones became something that online classes, so they had phones. No? And of course there were some difficulties when we tried. I brought back again the strict, because I'm in charge of theology in the Seminary of Manila. I'm in charge of the theologians there. So I already made a strict policy. And in the beginning, of course, there was a lot of reaction. It's a seminary already. But of course, later on when they experienced, because in the beginning there will be withdrawal symptoms, because if you're really stuck in the gadget, automatic that there's really, once you're addicted to it, there will always be withdrawal symptoms. So, but later on, little by little, as they got used to being without gadgets, later on they were able to experience suddenly the beauty of nature again, beauty of talking with friends, going out and then enjoying different experiences in nature, for example, with their classmates. And the important thing is to be able to find an alternative for them. Because you cannot simply just take out these gadgets, especially in the beginning, it will be really
Tough
very
love.
difficult. Yeah, tough love. That's actually where it comes in. No? Especially if you see that the child is already so much engrossed that, because once it's already an addiction, you really need, and the deeper the addiction, the more you need a specialist. So they should not wait for it to reach that point. That's why tough love should be the first thing that should come in, because in the end, they will thank you for it. But many of those who were not helped and they became addicted to it later on, and they were jailed, or they fell into suicidal tendencies, or really fell depression, they blame their parents because they were not actually controlled. In the end, they were actually blaming their parents. Why did they just allow us to? But of course, I don't also really blame the parents, because this is something new to them. It just came out the last 20 years. At least 10 years, more or less, the iPhone is more or less a little more than 10 years. So even the church is having it's a challenge to the church to be able to address, because the issues are just coming out now, the studies are just coming out now.
Father, is there a dichotomy between psychological and supernatural in cases that you've encountered, and how do you determine that?
Well, usually I'm also a psychologist, so I have my master's in USD, and therefore I see first and foremost that the devil cannot work in the vacuum. Okay? That means that the devil will not be able to simply attack you without any kind of opening in the person. Now the opening can be something spiritual, okay, primarily spiritual, but if you also have an opening that is psychological, emotional, and physical, he can enter the picture. Now, many people think kasi possession is, or the attacks of the devil is 100% either it's attack of the devil or it's 100% psychological. That's not true. Most of the time, it's 50-50 or 80-20, 20-80. So, for example, a person can be going to a certain doctor and the medications are not working. Now, after the pray over, the diabolical is removed, then immediately the medicines work. So the person is still sick, but now the medicines are taking effect because the devil blocking the healing is done. Or it can be that it's really diabolical. For example, a curse has been sent to the person to heal him. I have cases of that where the person talagang nangayaya, he becomes very, very thin. Even though he's eating, he cannot really, he doesn't become healthy. Then when you cut the curse, expel the spirit, then immediately the person becomes healthy. Okay, that means this is 100% spiritual. Now, psychological, if it's psychological, it's also easy to detect, because basically as a person who is psychologically ill will be psychologically ill 24/7. The person is like possessed, he will only be possessed at certain moments of the day. He will not be coherent, he will be coherent during certain moments of the day, he will not be possessed the entire time, like 24/7 and for the entire week. That's not how, the Lord doesn't allow that. That's why if the person is not being possessed at that moment, he has a job, I can talk to him, it's very normal. But if, for example, in the beginning, I'm talking to the person, I really discover that this person, we are not meeting, there's no meeting of the minds, he doesn't seem to understand me, and he doesn't seem to, I don't seem to understand what he's trying to say, we're not connecting. And if I ask the parents, is he really that way? Yes, Father, then that's already a sign that this could be more psychological. And therefore we try to determine if the person, for example, is 80% psychological or physiological and 20% is a spiritual, then we ask the person, maybe the person was sexually abused. In many of our cases, like of sisters who got possessed, they were sexually abused when they were young, they kept it, and later on as they got older, the spirit started to manifest, then we prayed over them, the spirits manifested.
The trauma of the attack.
That means when they were sexually abused when they were young, a spirit attached to it. And they remained there because there's a lot of anger there and unforgiveness. Usually spirits remain because of a certain choice in the person. It's not their fault that they were abused, but when they keep the anger and hatred there, it's not processed, then the spirits remain. So usually if we see that 80% is actually because of trauma, then we ask the person first to go to counseling. And when the person is more ready, then we expel the spirit, and then the manifestations end. Hindi na siya binababungot, he has no more nightmares, the person can pray well, the person is, his emotions are more calm, he's able now to enjoy more life and being a sister. But if we see that, for example, the person is, the 80% it is spiritual, that means diabolical, because maybe this person was always going to the occult. Especially mga bata na palaging dinadala, always being brought to the spiritista or albulario, fake healers. So as they bring the child back again and again, spirits tend to build up. So when they build up, every time the child goes, they will reach a point. It will reach a point wherein first, when it's, for example, 40%, the person will already start to have obsession. We call it obsessions, diabolical obsessions. That means this person can start to hear really like voices, or start to see things, or start to have suicidal thoughts, or recurring thoughts of the person. The child doesn't know where it's coming from. And then later on, or maybe the child thinks that it's her own thoughts. And later on, as the child keeps on going back to the occult practitioners, the demons build up until later on, the child starts already to, well, maybe let's imagine 80% na yung mga spirits. The child now will start to experience a lot of oppression. That means the attacks on the body. The child will wake up with bruises on the body, with scratch marks. The child will always have sicknesses that cannot be diagnosed by doctors. The child will have a lot of nightmares. The child will have a lot of mood swings. The child will have a lot of suicidal thoughts and tendencies, attacks of, we may say, depression. There will be a lot of mood swings. Usually, we call that manic depressive. And then, because the demon will have more and more power over the emotions, the imagination, and the memory of the child, and the body also. And if the person is not brought to a priest but continues to go to occult practitioners, tapos may mga anting-anting pa siya, no? all these amulets and talismans, then what happens is that the child can get possessed. Then therefore, when we pray over the child, it's not the child. Usually, pag children, it's not that heavy, it's not that difficult because it's not the fault of the child. But the parents have to go to confession and renounce what they did, and also do prayers over their child because they have spiritual authority. Because the sacrament of matrimony gives them spiritual authority over their children. That means when they pray over their child, very effective yun. So once they renounce what they did because they have spiritual authority and then confess it, then if the child is able to say the prayers, then we also ask the child to renounce any kind of maybe, because as a child becomes more and more spirits attached to the child, he becomes more and more sensitive to the spirit world. Later on, he could see imaginary friends, mga encantos, fairies, whatever. He becomes very sensitive. Even they see dead people, etc. These are demons. So what happens is that when we exorcise the child, then all the sicknesses disappear. All the sicknesses disappear. And that means that was 100% diabolical. So when we do an interview, we have to find out the history, very important, of why the devil has entered the life of this person. Because the devil cannot simply enter the life of a person unless you open certain doorways. And he can aggravate also certain conditions in us. If we have a spiritual opening, he will aggravate our psychological, emotional, relational, and physiological, our body, and cause sicknesses and problems there.
Father, the Ministry of Exorcism in the digital media, parang mas intense pa yung attack niya, no? Compared to what was happening like 20, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Is the church going to look into this with more focus? Because napakatindi po ng impact ng digital media sa mga kabataan natin ngayon.
The hard thing to say is that the digital media is moving yung technology is moving very, very fast. Before even the church can come in and put in moral guidelines with regards to. Now, I think in the Ministry of Exorcism, because we encounter very tangibly and we see the effects really, that how the devil can use the social media. That's why we are more attuned to the reality that there is really something diabolical there in the social media. Now, with regards to the other areas of the church, of course, they see that the social media can take away, like, isolate a person, cause these certain problems, but it's more of not something diabolical. It's more of something maybe moral or maybe relational. That is the issue. But we, in the midst of exorcism, because we experience really a diabolical element with regards to the use of the media. Because remember that, we just shift a bit. The devil has power over anything that is electrical, everything. That's why he can, when he wants to appear, he can, he can dim the lights, they will be flickering. And here, there are many cases, even in the US, where the devil texts the exorcist. He can communicate, call the exorcist to the phone. He can text the exorcist, and even though the phone of the demoniac is there, right beside, my phone is here. And it's not, the person is not touching her cell phone. The demon is texting. Messages are coming from her cell phone. And that has happened many times. I mean, the devil has power over this. And the danger there is that, especially the AI, the devil can easily enter into an AI and then start to manipulate what will the responses of the AI to a person. It's very easy for the demon to do that. Because before the entry of the smartphone, there's what we call EVP, electronic voice phenomena, wherein people, ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, were trying to communicate and trying to communicate with the spirit world, and trying to find evidences that there are spirits beyond the natural world. And therefore they will have all of these gadgets in order to detect them. And they would have these tape recorders and even radios, wherein they will put it into static, and then they will go, if you are there, tell us, give us a sign, and then boom, the spirit will speak. Now it's very easy for them to enter into these gadgets, because it's so when we say it's more so complex that it's very hard to detect more or less what is already human, what is not human. And therefore, in our experience, many of our cases who got possessed now and who fell into diabolical attacks was because of the social media. Directly because there were curses there and spirits were sent because they opened a site that was satanic, they made a pact with Satan. Or because of they entered immoral sites, and when the spirits, because demons can usually, when you gaze at a certain site that's immoral and you're in some form of trance state, then the spirits can enter immediately and attach to the body, because they're attracted to anything that is, we may say, like them. They're attracted to what is like them. So when a demon of lust sees a young person who is so open to him, very deep into lust, then the spirits are drawn to that person. Like sharks, when they smell blood, immediately, automatically, they attach to that person. And therefore, what happens is that you can see immediately, in the beginning, wala pang habit of sin, and later on, very fast, there's an addiction. And usually, when they try psychological intervention, it's not enough, because you're dealing also with a diabolical spirit that is aggravating the addiction, keeping it stuck. Parang may gumagatong, there's something that is attached to the addiction, so that to make it not only a human problem, but it's a preternatural problem, a spiritual problem also.
What kind of atmosphere or environment in the home then would you strongly recommend to at least try to prevent things like this going on? In the reality of a digital environment in a modern world, families that can afford the gadgets, I think that many parents can sense there's something wrong, but they're not sure what, short of confiscating the phone, what else can be done to try to protect your child.
But basically what you have to create really is a sacred atmosphere in the home. And knowing, because the important thing there is that when there's a vacuum in the home, then the devil will immediately fill up the vacuum. Because you have to understand that the devil will always, while he's still on this earth, will always look for some form of territory in order to have power over. Whether it's a person, it's a thing, it's a thing like a baleta tree, or it can be an amulet or a talisman, or it can be an animal. Okay, we also exercise animals also. Right? And it can also be, as we know in the gospel, where Jesus expelled legion from the pigs. From the legion from the jealousy demoniac and through legion into the pigs. No? So I had one case where I was exercising a woman, and then immediately the woman was liberated, but the dog started to become wild. I had to go outside and then I had to exorcise the dog, and then the demon went back to the woman. The woman started snarling. So they can also possess animals, and I've seen that in cases where in a person who has demons in the house and they want to get rid of it, usually the animals will come wild or run amok, okay, and suddenly start biting the owner. And the dog was actually, or the pet was a pet that was very, didn't show any kind of hostility or violent tendencies. That's why I always say, during the feast of Saint Francis, tell your animals blessed also. And it's good also for them to have some sacramentals. Now, the importance of creating a sacred space in the home is the proper use of sacramentals. And of course, it would be good also that, because you have to understand that, for example, to the internet, a child may be trying to access, maybe you open a site and there's a curse. But if, for example, there are sacramentals there, the child may be in the state of grace, but if he's not, but there's sacramentals there, the house has been properly blessed, okay? The house has been consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mama Mary and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. In the room of the child, there's a Saint Benedict's medal. Then when the demon tries to come in, it gets burned, so it doesn't want to go. It will remain. It will retreat again. It will not enter into the environment. For example, you can also use regularly holy water around. Especially, for example, another thing that attracts so many demons, especially today, is when there's a lot of negativity in the family, toxic. Usually, one of the things we look for immediately when there's a lot of paranormal is how is the relationship among the family members. Usually, it's very toxic. But once they start to get their peace, they forgive each other. Immediately, just one blessing, it's totally there. No more paranormal manifestation. So when I tell people, when for example you fight with a loved one in the home, immediately use holy water because your fight could have already attracted some spirits and they will aggravate the next fight. That means the next fight will even be worse. So immediately use holy water around the place so that you are sure that no spirits have entered into because they have been attracted to the emotional tension or anger, and therefore they are now there and they are waiting for the next fight to aggravate it or to trigger you. So use holy water so that you create a sacred space within your home. That's why it is important to know how to use the sacramentals, especially young children. Sana batang-bata pa lang, they're still very young. Already, they should already be taught a devotion to the guardian angel. Very powerful devotion to the guardian angel. Because when they have the devotion to the guardian angel makes sure that what is beyond the parents, they will take care of. Because the angels cannot simply act in our lives. They also, like God, respect our freedom. They protect us, yes. But their protection always, the efficacy or how much they enter into your life will depend upon your free will. So if your children have a devotion to the angels, and when children pray, they're very innocent and very sincere, the angel immediately assists them. So if they have a good devotion with their angels, their guardian angels, and they are taught early to have that love for their angels, to call upon them when they are in need, and they will be protected. Usually when they want to go to an evil site, the angel will inspire them. That's dangerous. I mean, they will experience these inspirations. The inspirations will become stronger and stronger as the child develops his relation with the angels. They become more, when we say, active in the life of the child. And of course, the family devotion to Our Lady and Saint Joseph. But I think the most important thing is to always be in the state of grace. That's the most important thing. Because if you're in the state of grace, any demon that comes in and he sees Christ still and the Holy Spirit alive in you, the Holy Spirit is so much alive and Jesus is there, very much present in your soul. Immediately, they feel they're getting burned already. And they abhor ayaw nila, they become nadidiri sila, and therefore they themselves want to get out of that place, of that home. That's why it's very important to, if you want to deal with the gadgets, you will have to do it because each family is different. So how much discipline you've really done to your child as he was growing up, how close you are as with regards to trust, whatever. Have you been really relating with your child in a way by which a child can be very open? If that is, then it's very easy, because you can talk about these things if the child is more or less more mature intellectually, and you can come up with certain plans where you don't take away you don't take away the gadgets. You simply use the gadgets in a way that is good, right? Wherein it is used to focus more on what is good, beautiful, and true than what is ugly, what is sinful, and what is what is evil. Because as I
Father,
mentioned, yeah.
you mentioned about encouraging our children to start early on their devotionals. Are you in fact saying that we add a fresh module to the catechism of the church with respect to digital media and the pitfalls of new media? Father?
Yeah, actually that should be the number one now because that's the number one opening now of the devil to the young. Is the social media. More than anything else, they're being educated with regards to sexuality, values by the social media, not anymore by the parents. And St. John Paul II said that the primary duty of sex education is the primary duty of the parents. And the primary teachers and the educators are the parents. And therefore, if there is no good foundation in the family, when they go to school, if they don't have a good foundation, it's not going to work that way. Because the school is not supposed to be replace the parents. This is supposed to supplement the parents, not replace them as the main educators, especially about the faith. And especially the church, because you have to understand that, of course, the church is there, but it's also to supplement and support the growing Christian life of the person. It cannot take the place of the parents. That's why God has placed, Jesus himself had to grow for so many years within the family, in wisdom and grace, within the family structure, because that's the will of God. That's how the child grows. That's why it cannot be that you expect in other institutions to replace the duties of the parents. And therefore, parents now have to be educated, especially on how to, we may say, how do you make sure that the social media becomes an instrument for good and not an opening for the diabolical. But that's why it's important for the parents to be able to also be part of the journey of the child in the virtual world. The parents should know what's going on. Because remember, in the virtual world, there are no boundaries. Unlike if you leave a child no social media, you leave a child in the house, he can only do so much. No? Or he can be with a barkada, more or less the barkada, so not so much. You cannot do, the influence is only within that small barkada. But now the influence can come from the entire world. I can just click something and I can go to the, something so radical and extreme and so ugly, and I can, and as a child goes more and more into these sites because they're very curious and they want this. So the more they get desensitized to these things, and therefore the more they don't anymore see anything that is wrong. They don't feel any more shame in it, so they can enter into sex without any kind of being affected in any way. That is what we call hardened. The conscience has been killed already. Konsensya namatay na because they've been desensitized to sin. And they cannot anymore even know what is good. They're not anymore attracted what is good, what is modest, what is beautiful. Because the lower faculties are so drawn towards the pleasures of the flesh that the social media is actually giving it. Also, social media is meant really to cater to the flesh, not the spirit. That's why many people, they found out in Facebook that the people with the most friends are the most lonely. Because you may have all those friends, but man is made not for the virtual world, but for the real world. When I'm in front of a real person, it releases certain biochemicals in my brain, and I feel a bond with the person. But if it's not physically present, that it doesn't occur. And therefore, in order for example, children to experience relationship bonding, they have to experience things together. That means they do things together, not they're all in one table, they're all in their phones. So we call that they're all together but alone still. That's why the important thing is to be able to come up with wherein they experience life together in the real world, not in the virtual world. Because we're not made for the virtual world. Our minds are not adapted for the virtual world. They can help, but they cannot replace. But now with the young children, the virtual world now is replacing the real world. That is where they find their values, where they find their pleasures, they find their recreation, that's where they find their friends, that's where they find their, all their needs met are there, fine. It's all in the virtual world. And no one is checking up on this, where the child is going to get how these needs met. They're going to the wrong places.
Father, can you describe what happened during the conference, of the sessions we had?
Well, during the conference, what we did was basically we talked about the social media, a bit of how the devil is desensitizing a lot of young people by having a lot of these movies, cartoons, even all these satanic images, and making people desensitized to them, so that a child can have in his shirt 666 without being, parang it's ordinary, it's okay. He doesn't know that, of course, with that emblem, immediately spirits can attach it because they're attracted to whatever is like them. No? And if you wear a shirt that it has 666, usually you are opening yourself up na it's okay for me to have this spirit. So usually the spirits will come in. And therefore they try to desensitize us to Satanism, to all that is diabolical, and try to make it something that is for like something that is not dangerous. That's why they make it into cartoons, anime. But ang dami doon mga satanic symbols, satanic characters, like the Pokemon. Those are all pocket demons, and many of those in social media, yung mga especially Japanese anime, most of those demons that are named, those are real names of demons. But children don't know that. So basically, that was one area, and the other area was more of, because there were a lot of new exorcists and a lot of lay teams, so we made sure that we got lay persons who work with exorcism teams, of how an exorcism team works, how to form an exorcism team, and how to better not only form them, but how to become more effective in the ministry, how to form them as a community, a gospel community, and also a ministry. Those are the two dimensions. Because it is useless to minister to others if you're not also growing in holiness. Because a ministry should always have an effect on your own personal life. That means, so if you're a community that is in service, therefore kayo mismo, it's a sign that it is of the Lord, because it is bearing fruit in your own personal life. At least your community is also growing in holiness. And as you grow more in holiness, then you become even more effective to people who come to you in need in the ministry. Just like if I'm a priest, but I'm not living my priestly life well, then it can have an effect on the people I minister to. So ganun din yung ministries, exorcism team. And we try to teach them how to discern charisms, and how the lay can help the priest, and exorcists, and how the exorcists should also work with the team, because they should always be together. Because the devil's main tactic always, especially the way you see it, is always isolation, divide, and then conquer. That's why if you want to see whether a child is already being influenced by the devil, you have first to look at, is a child starting to isolate himself or herself already from the support systems of a family, friends. Pag nag-umpisa na yan, the devil is already starting to work on the mind. And you start to talk to the child, you will see that most of the time you will hear, when the child shares to you the thoughts and maybe even voices, you will see it's all self-destructive. Then you will see it's all dark, negative, self-destructive. They're not positive thoughts. Once a child starts to isolate himself, the devil is already working in the mind. Because the devil has power to put thoughts in our mind, or put images in our imagination.
What is next for this group, Father?
Well, the next is we're inviting a Monsignor Rossetti. He's a well-known psychologist and also retreat master, and also an exorcist in the States. And because we were supposed to invite another exorcist, but nagkaroon ng pandemic, we were not happy because the last conference, Monsignor Quintanar said Cebu will host. So they were so happy naman na not only Manila, no? So but the pandemic hit. No? So one of our exorcists from the States was supposed to talk. Because parang nagkaroon siya ng long COVID. We had 2 COVID attacks and then long COVID sa mga. So we had to find another priest, Father Lambert, another exorcist from another diocese, but suddenly last minute the bishop did not give him permission. So we were able to get Adam Blay, a lay person, and then also Francesco. So they are both helping in exorcism teams, and they have their own specializations. So we said that it's good for them to give talks, so that they can give the perspectives on the ministry, on the side, the perspective of the lay person within the exorcism team. So what the do's and the don'ts, what are their best practices, their learnings, how to better form a team that is really a gospel community that is rooted always in Christ, and really doing the ministry properly. So yun, so very important. So we opened it up to the lay person. Before we had lay persons, but not so many. But although, yun nga, medyo konti pa rin yung mga lay, no? in Manila, there were more lay persons. Here, mukhang there are more priests. But these priests, many of them are new. So that's also our challenge, is to find out how much advanced training do we give, or how much basic training do we give. That's always our quandary. Kasi sometimes in our evaluation, we always evaluate afterwards. What would you want the topic to be the next time, the next conference? Usually, some would want more advanced courses. The other more basic because mga bago lang. No? So that's where we always have a challenge. So we try to see how what we can do about that. So now we plan to maybe 2 days first, the first 2 days in basic, and then the last days more advanced courses. Because some of them have been in the ministry for years now. While some are just
Happening
new.
next year, rather.
Every year dapat to eh.
When was the last time, Father?
Actually before the pandemic. Actually that was the
2020.
dati every year until the pandemic hit. Then we don't do it online because very dangerous. Everything's confidential.
Since when have you started working?
This is the 5th already, so maybe 20, the 5th. Because we in the previous ones we used to show a lot of videos of exorcisms. To show them how to hold the person, how to the entire process of, for example, a demoniac is there from the beginning to the end. So we also show them what happens so that they get used to it, and also how a team works within that environment where the person is violent and is manifesting the diabolical spirit. So we show them real clips so that they know what to do immediately when, especially the team knows where they position themselves and how to help the exorcist there.
I think probably the main challenge for lay collaborators is the fear factor.
It's normal. In the beginning, I was also always afraid in the beginning.
Kahit na yung mga matagal ng associate ni Monsignor Fred Brigende, natatakot pa rin sila.
That's true.
Alright.
Maybe unless, because kami, kasi we have a lot of formation programs, kami, no? We go on retreats together. Because actually, if you get to know the devil really, more and more, you lose your fear because you get to see him as Christ sees him, and Christ was never afraid of the devil. We only get afraid when we have a wrong notion of the devil because we watch Hollywood films, so we think, so pwedeng patayin yung exorcist, the exorcist can be possessed, or whatever. No? But that doesn't happen, or the exorcist is killed or whatever, no? And that doesn't happen. And as you get to know more and more about demonology and about the devil, the enemy, then you start to understand really that, and you start to see the devil with the eyes of Christ, with the eyes of faith. Then you lose your fear because you see him as Christ sees him. He's already defeated. Actually, the devil is only good in portraying himself that he's more powerful than he really is. He's a deceiver. That's why he uses really, if he sees that you are, that he can change your image of who he is and make him more powerful than he is, then talagang matatakot ka. But if you continue to study demonology and see him really in action when you do exorcisms, that he's very limited power actually. Your fear, wala na. Ako zero fear na in any case. I don't have because you have to understand, of course in the beginning, because I had no one to train me. I went around, there was no other exorcists in the Philippines now. That was 2002. Of course, Monsignor Quebec was doing deliverance, but there were no exorcist, no bishop was giving still a faculty to exorcist. Deliverance is a charism. Exorcism is an office. Delegated by the bishop. So, and you use the Roman ritual. There were no Roman rituals in the Philippines anymore. So I had to go to Rome to meet Father Amorth in order to learn more about the ministry. Because when I was looking for any priest who knew about exorcism, even the bishops didn't know what the Roman ritual was and how it looked. So there in the beginning, then I had to learn the hard way, and I really was very afraid because I didn't really know what the devil might do to me, and many times he really, because of my fear, and I didn't really know how to really deal. No one was training me, so I made a lot of mistakes. So the devil was playing around with me for some time. It was only later on when I was able to get other exorcists to assist me, and we were able to find other exorcists in Rome to assist us. And with reading also and getting more, learning from our cases, then little by little, the fear, nawala na yung fear, little by little the fear dissipated. Of course, we're still always guarded but we're not afraid of them. But we're always, we may say, prudent, because each demon is unique and they are different personalities. They're different persons, and therefore each demon is unique. So they're not all the same, and therefore we're always still very prudent, because a demon some demons are more violent, the others are more talkative, iba-iba. Each one has his own strategy. So but they cannot go beyond certain parameters that the Lord has set. That's why they cannot hurt the exorcism.
From your book, I learned that all ordained priests have the authority for minor exorcism, and yet I don't see anybody. Is it something like they know they can, but they just want to do it?
And now more young priests are knowledgeable, because that's why I always tell the priests, you have to know how to do minor exorcisms, because many people invite you to their houses and they say, Father, can you bless our house? But actually, because it's actually to exorcise their house, but they don't say exorcise, because there are many paranormal occurrences there. Now, if a priest just blesses the house, no, minimal effect. Because when you're dealing with the devil, you have to command them to go. A blessing is not going to expel them. You have to, that's why the priest has to know how to do minor exorcisms, because as Jesus said, in my name you will cast out demons. And therefore, if I don't command them to go, they will remain in the place. If I just simply bless, if they're powerful demons, they will remain there. So I tell the exorcists, you have to command them if you want them to leave. And that's very important. If you simply bless the house, they will not go. That's why you have to know how to do minor exorcisms. And besides, as I mentioned, not all cases are possession. Majority are actually oppression. A child cannot sleep, palagi binabangungot. A child cannot, has a lot of nightmares. Yes, one pray over, that's just oppression. So,
which a parent can actually do, because he has spiritual authority.
Because the sacrament of matrimony not only gives the moral authority over the parents, but also spiritual authority over the parents. So when they pray over their children, it's a sacramental. And therefore it's very powerful, especially when it comes from the parent.
The parents should also be in a state of grace, Father, when they do that.
Well, the important thing, they can pray to the Lord, but if when you're using sacramentals, you have to be in the state of grace for it to be effective. But they can also, if they're not maybe in a state of grace at that moment, they can still pray to God, and because they still have authority over their children. But the sacramentals work when there is more faith. That means that being in a state of grace and praying from your heart. That means when they use holy water, they have to add a prayer to it. Lord, bless my child, keep her from the evil one. So in the early years of my ministry, sometimes the parents were the ones blessing the child every day. We didn't need to exercise them anymore. The child is gets liberated, precisely just because of the parents were praying every day over the child.
That's an underappreciated power.
Yeah.
Huh?
They have spiritual, just as a
All
priest has
parents?
spiritual power over his parishioners, given by God by the sacrament of holy orders. The parents have the spiritual authority over their children and their home, but it's through the sacrament of matrimony. So even not only their family members, but even their home.
Physical area.
That's why, for example, a family is about to build a house, and then the contractor says, can we offer blood? Once the family says yes, then the spirits are given a right to that place, then they will cause a lot of problems. They can cause, then suddenly later on in the house, there's a lot of anger, maybe the siblings start to fight, and then the parents may even separate, and then they cannot connect it with, because they've consecrated actually the place by offering blood to the spirits around, we call them the elementals, and they consecrated already the house to the spirits. And therefore when a priest goes there and blesses, minimal effect. Because it's already consecrated to fallen angels.
Some think it's a harmless custom.
Yeah. Because actually these customs were part of our pagan past when we were not yet Christians. So man had to relate with the spirit world, with the fallen angels. And therefore, because man discovered that we are weaker than the fallen angels, then therefore I have to submit myself. So if I want to pass through a certain place, like in tabi po, because or else the spirit demons are very territorial. If you enter their territory, they're very proud, they will hurt you. And before we didn't have any protection, that's why we tend to offer something, they will ask us to offer something. Now, the occult practitioner is a person who is usually the person who is most psychic, who is most sensitive. It means he can see the spirits and talk to them. So he's the one who talks to them, and the spirits say, okay, as long as this person submits and offers this offering, maybe tobacco or food or whatever, then that's why they worship. then they're already happy. Okay, because the demon's main desire is to be worshipped like God. And therefore, when the person offers all this food, blood, maybe blood of goats or chicken, or something else that the demons desire, it doesn't matter what is given, as long as it's a sign of submission. That okay, this is an appeasement, peace offering. Okay, so once you do that, therefore the demon already has a certain power over you, authority over you. And therefore, with the coming of Christ came precisely to remove us from the power of the fallen angels, and move us from the kingdom of darkness, the kingdom of Satan, move us into the kingdom of light. Okay, remove us from the dominion of Satan. That means all these religions wherein we worship the fallen angels. So, and move us to the worship of one true God. And now, therefore, when you're baptized as a Christian, you're a Catholic, and we pass through those places, immediately the evil spirits immediately see us, and they're afraid of us already. But once, for example, you're a Catholic and you say, "Tabi-tabi po," and you're asking permission from them again, then they will work on the practice. Then they will say, "This person doesn't know his power and his identity." So now we will enter into this person's life through fear and superstition. So once the person continues to do that, the more you do it, the more you are actually saying, "Lord, I don't trust in your power, in your protection, that I'm still in the kingdom of darkness and fear. So I will have to do this or I might get hurt." So I do that. And because of that, the protection of the Lord really is, in a sense, you put aside God's protection, and the demons start to have more power over you and can now manipulate you more. That's why you have to ask yourself, why we're an 80% Catholic country but so many possessions? It's because we are still actually pagan. Many of our people are still pagan. We still worship the gods. We still perform the rituals that these gods have given to our ancestors. We're still actually continuing paganism. Even externally, I'm going to Mass, I'm a Catholic, but all my actions is that I still engage myself with the fallen angels around me and submit myself to them. Wearing their amulets, their talismans, going to their sorcerers, their followers of the pagan religion. We go to them for help, for healing, to know the future. In order, we're telling the Lord, "Lord, you're not enough. I need to go back to these people because you will not give me all that I need." So it's like you're telling the Lord, "Lord, I still need to go back to them because you won't give me everything. You're not enough for me." When God actually precisely give us everything. So actually, that's what gives the sigurista kasi tayo mga Pilipino. Wala namang mawawala eh. So I'll do this, nakayumaman ako. I'll have pungsloy, without thinking what is really going on. What is this? If it's something spiritual, it can either come from God, the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of the evil one. Either or. It cannot come from, there's no middle kingdom.
Okay.
What is your personal takeaway from this event?
In what sense po?
In the sense of
The conference?
the evolving ministry in
Well, the bit about that, what's going on right now is that many people now are being awakened to the fact about the reality of this, the reality of the spirit world, because man has always tried to resolve things, especially now through science. You can see all the problems in society, and with the advance of psychology, psychiatry, the sciences, there are so many advances, but you can see it's not addressing the real issues. There's still more, there's a lot more suicides, a lot more depression, a lot more killings, violence. It's not, that means we're forgetting the most important dimension. The dimension that is within the realm of the spirit. We're trying to answer a spiritual problem which is simply a problem that is human. It's not a problem that only deals with the human dimension. And therefore, you have to understand that the devil's number one tactic is he wants to remain hidden. Okay, why? Because if he remains hidden, first he can attack you, and you don't know where, and you think it's simply your bad luck, but there's no such thing as bad luck or good luck, right? Because everything is under divine providence. There is no such thing as something outside the divine providence. Everything is under the power of God, okay? Permitted by God or His intention, His direct will. So anything that happens, okay, there is no such thing as chance, even or coincidence. Everything is under divine providence because God is in control of everything. So if something happens to me and it's negative, and again it happens to me, And I don't believe in the spirit world. I don't believe in the devil. Then I will say it's either my life is malas, okay? And I will never go to maybe a fortune teller. I go to the pagan practitioners to find help, or I will start to disbelieve in a loving God. I will get angry at God. So the devil doesn't want us to know that where the attacks are coming from, where our miseries are coming from. That's his number one tactic. If we remain hidden, then basically we become more open to his attacks. It's like you have a terrorist in your city and you don't believe that he's there, so masaya siya. No? You can bomb any place and you don't even believe that he exists, even though your whole city is already crumbling. And secondly, because people don't tend to believe in the devil or that he can act this way, then people get angry. They say, why is the Lord like this? Or they don't believe anymore in God or that he's a loving God. So when people come to me, Father, why is the Lord doing this to me? And I say, when I interview them, I say, look at your life. Your decisions have allowed the devil to come in. It's the devil attacking you. It's you with your choices and small decisions that allow the devil to have an entry to your life. He's causing you misery. And therefore, you have to now learn to close those doors and expel him from your lives. Then the blessings of God can come in. And then you will experience really what it is to be freed and a true child of God, experience the fulfillment of being a true child of God. But because you don't know, basically, and that you're under attack, St. Paul tells us, it's really spiritual war. But if you don't think you're in the battle, talagang you will get hit and then you don't know what's going on. You don't even know how to address the issues. So most of our cases, almost all our cases of those who got suicidal cases, when we pray over the person, nawawala yung suicidal thoughts. Okay, so, but because, of course, they need counseling because maybe they were abused and they were young. So they still need to process them. But the alternative to kill themselves, the impulse, the thoughts, the voices, then I said, so you can see how the devil aggravates always and enters the picture when a person is vulnerable. So if you remove, for example, even one of my last cases, I prayed over a psychiatrist. Sabi Father, when I started praying over my cases, praying for them as a psychiatrist, before my cases would last 4 years, ngayon, 8 months lang. It ends, they're healed already. So you can see how the supernatural actually is assists the human dimension, especially when there is a diabolical element there, a spiritual element that is diabolical, that is blocking the healing.
Father, tungkol po sa order ni Vice President Sara Duterte to remove all images from the classroom. Marami sa mga public schools natin ay naka-display po yung larawan ng Manda Birhen, ng Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
But there is an order from the DepEd na...
Yeah, that's why that's wrong. That's not very wrong kasi look what happened to the stage and they remove all the images. Look na, there's a lot of mass shootings among children. There's a lot of... because once you remove the crucifix, the sacramental there that says that, we here in this room are under the protection of God and we seek your protection and your authority over this place. Once you say that we don't want to have anything to do with God, God will respect our freedom. And that's where the danger will come in, because basically, as a place can become haunted or infested, the less the sacramentals are used. The more the sacramentals are used, then the more the house has, there's a sacred atmosphere there, and it's easier to become holy, and the temptations are less. So, if for example, you remove all these sacramentals and all our sacramentals there, then that becomes another door. That becomes a very big door for the evil spirits now to easily influence kids. Because many times we have cases where in mass possession. Schools. Yeah. It's because usually what happens is that usually if you talk to these kids, most of them, bukas yung third eye nila, they're very sensitive, they're psychic. And they've been brought to a lot of alboralios. And all they need is maybe a child, maybe threw a stone to a certain tree that is infested, and therefore they were easily possessed. But usually when there's mass possession, usually the first person who gets possessed is usually the one where the main spirit is. And you have to exorcise him first and then separate the kids, bring them away from the area where the elemental, mostly it's an elemental, that was in a certain area in the school or maybe in a tree, and then exorcise them one by one. Then you interview them, then let them go to confession if they're old enough to confess, and renounce whatever, and also the parents to renounce whatever occult practices they did. Then once you remove the right of the spirits, then it's easy to expel them. That's why there's no such thing as mass hysteria. And that's not a term anymore used in science and psychology, because they have not been able to find any real cause for mass hysteria. And besides our kids, there's nothing traumatic. Naglalaro lang sila, maybe na to dun sa puno, or maybe they were doing spirit of the glass in the classroom, and all of them got possessed. So,
Is the CBCP coming out with a statement to address that issue, Father? Regarding the order of the Vice President, or is the death
as of now, I don't yet know. But that will have very strong repercussions, especially right now with so much evil now. Sa ating nga is in the stage nga the young are not the children. That was the start of the downfall of the innocence of the children. They destroyed any kind of protection from by removing all the crucifixes, the Bibles, any kind of prayer, etc. And now we see the effects. And that's not a coincidence. That is really the result of the diabolical. When there's a vacuum, the diabolical will always enter. Then they remove the authority of the parents, try to destroy the authority and credibility of the parents over the children, try to focus more on the rights of the children than the parents. And later on now, even the children have rights now to change their gender, and the parents cannot do anything. They have to pay for that. And they cannot, if you try to go against that, you can be brought to court. So you can already see how actually the devil is, as Saint Lucia said, the final battle between God and Satan will be about the family and marriage. Ayan sabi. So you can see now how the devil desires to destroy the very foundation of the family and marriage by destroying lives even at a very young age. When they grow up, they will not be able to form commitments. They will not be able to form proper commitments in marriage, and of course, their families will become dysfunctional.
Father, how extensive is your network in the country? Do all our archdioceses and dioceses have exorcism teams?
No, right
what
now,
are the characteristics of, let's say, a priest or a layperson to be able to be part of this?
Well, first you have to understand that since I started, basically it was around 2002, I started the ministry. And then we started the office 2006 because
The
I saw
office in Manila.
Because I saw that one priest cannot do this. It's impossible. He needs a team, and I saw the importance of a team. And then when we started forming exorcists from the suffragan dioceses and some faraway dioceses, but still because basically it was still difficult to get the bishops on board, right? Because of course this is something that is again extremely new. No? With all the pastoral programs of the bishops, it's been very difficult to start this thing. So what happened was that it was only 2017 that 13 priests, exorcists, came together and said, we better start an association like the one that they have in Rome, in Italy, which used to be headed. It was founded by Father Gabriel Amor, Rome's chief exorcist then, and he founded it in order to bring exorcists together as support, and also that they may train together. They have brotherly support. And therefore, in 2017, that's the only time that PACHE, or the Philippine Association of Catholic Exorcists, was formed. Okay? And then, our main goal was to disseminate to train exorcists, disseminate information regarding the ministry in order to evangelize people and to prevent people from entering into the diabolical world, and to make also the bishops more aware of what is going on. And later on, so we started with the conferences, and from the conferences we also have a radio program, etc. And I also started to write, and I was also writing books then, and we had a Facebook, an email also. So from there, when we were accepted as with statutes, as a association under the CBCP, then the bishops became open, because that means that we are recognized not only by the CBCP, that means we have proper statutes, we have proper norms, guidelines, etc. And also because we're also affiliated with Rome, AIE, the National Association of Exorcism. So when the bishop saw that we were properly guided already and we were with proper authority, then when they heard that we had conferences, then they wanted to train their exorcists. Now they wanted to have exorcists and to have them trained. And so when the exorcists went back and the people started to discover that that there was this ministry, then people started now to go to the church. So imagine, for example, in one diocese there we could have 1,000 albularyo's. And now these Catholics learned that suddenly, boom, there's now this exorcist who can help them. They don't have to go anymore to these pagan practitioners. So that's the time that the exorcists became aware that there were so many cases pa lang. But they were not going to the church because they were afraid of the priest. Because the priest would say, you just didn't eat breakfast, or, isang tulog lang yan, you just sleep it off,
So even priests do not recognize
before, because we were not trained in the seminary. We never discussed about demonology. We don't have demonology, or exorcism was not mentioned in the seminary.
But has that changed?
Now it has changed because some like now in San Carlos Seminary in Makati, where I teach, we have now a course on exorcism, deliverance. And I think
What about the other seminaries?
I think there are some other seminaries have already started. Some other seminaries have also started. And there are many young priests now who are now more aware of the needs of this spiritual warfare. And because of that, when the bishops would ask their exorcists, the exorcists would say, "Bishop, there are real cases, and there are many of them." So they asked that more exorcists be appointed, and also that lay people can assist them, because they saw that really more effective pag may mga lay persons. And because of that, the bishops found out that this is something that is really important, relevant today, and that many people actually now are looking for this ministry. And they were simply only going to the albularies. That's why we never encountered them, or they were afraid not to go to the priest. So we never really encountered these people who were in need of help. But now they're coming back to the church. And the bit about the ministry is that because people have a tangible experience of the devil, when they have a tangible experience of God's compassion and power into the ministry, and the power of His love, then there is a radical transformation of the entire, not only the person, but the entire family. Because nakikita nila na this is nakakatakot when they see the power of God coming in. That's why in the early church, exorcism was used as a tool to evangelize. Because they could see that the demons who did not answer to any other power answered always to the power of Christ. They always reacted to the power and presence of Christ.
How many exorcists we have here in the Philippines?
Right now, the last count was we had 170 members of PACHE. At least these are members.
Because these are all priests, no?
These are all priests, yes.
Sa lay pa.
Sa lay, wala pa. We only started now this year. They were joining, but we didn't yet have time to really, tapos na ng pandemic, to really process them. Okay, or to give them also further training. Because if, for example, if you're a priest and you have one case, they have your number, very hard yan, no? They will be calling you day and night, and one pray over, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes it takes, can take months, depending upon how open the person, how willing the person is to really be helped, how sincere the person is, how radical is his desire to return back to the Lord. So very important yun, no? And also, if you're only one exorcist, maybe, and you have a parish to take care of, then maybe 5 cases, book ka na. 5 cases are very heavy. Because you have to interview them, they have to evangelize them, you have to pray over, you have to follow up. They will usually have harassments, so they will have questions.
So and then you have to run your parish pa.
Yeah, you have to run your parish. That's why with the lay persons, very efficient. We can handle more cases because one lay person can do the interview, evangelization, catechism, then the host of the family, help in the renouncement, the prayers needed to pray, how to use the proper sacramentals, how to begin a devotion to Mama Mary and the angels. Then when the time for exorcism, it tells the exorcist and team, this is the case, these are the openings, these are the manifestations, these are the openings of the person, these are the assignments that I've given, the person is ready now to be prayed over because he's sincere and has done the assignments, has renounced the confession, renounced all occult activities, for example, forgiven the person who has hurt him or her. And then we do the pray over. The lay person is there in charge of the case. Then afterwards, the lay person journeys also afterward. After the pray over, usually a few days, the person starts to experience the benefits of the exorcism. If hindi totally natanggal yung spirit, usually the person maybe still be open to some harassment. So the lay volunteer is the one who keeps up the constant motivation to proceed, to continue to have hope in the Lord, that the Lord is working, and continues to evangelize and journeys with the case until the time that when the case gets closed. The case gets closed only after a month that there are no more manifestations. That means the person is not anymore being possessed, or the person can already sleep well. And secondly, the second goal is the person now is in love with the Lord. So the main goal is always love with the Lord. It's useless to be liberated and lose your soul. So, and yung dalawang objectives namin is that the person is liberated from the harassment, and secondly, he is now in a deeper relationship with the Lord than before. Whether his past or many of them kasi medyo their Catholicism is medyo Sunday Catholic sila. So Sunday there's a radical conversion in the entire family also.
What are the requirements, Father, for lay people to be part of the exorcism ministry?
Well, usually what we do is that we try to check their motivations, okay? And then we try to discover what are their primary vocations. For example, married yung tao or religious or whatever. No? And we try to see why, because for me, like for example, exorcist. How do I know that an exorcist is called? Not simply because he comes, Father, I'm not an exorcist. I don't simply, para sa akin, sa akin. Because I experienced that na priests come in because they're curious, and then they get harassed, and then boom, that's the end. No? Even sometimes they lose their priesthood. So, usually when I have to know their history. So they come to me and say, Father, I want to learn why. Father, because even as a deacon, these cases start to come to me. And next month, meron na naman. And then meron. That's why the sign that the Lord is sending them these cases to him. That means the Lord wants him to learn about the ministry to assist this person. So when I see that, so what did you do? Father, I did these prayers, and then itong nangyari. How is it affecting you? Father, it's helping me grow in spiritual life. So I see the fruit in the person's life. And I see that the Lord is really giving the person cases, and he's entering the ministry because he wants to better help the people. And the Lord is giving him cases because he wants him to learn more about the ministry. Then that's the person's nothing to pray now. So sa mga lay person, we also try to check the motivations. Ano ba yung mga motives ng tao why he wants to enter? Because many sometimes are curious, and then so I have to interview them. Usually yung mga my volunteers, most of them all of them are my cases. Almost all of them are my cases. Some of them were possessed. Some of them, yung mga volunteers that we saw there, yung mga naka-violet, I prayed over all of them. They were my former cases.
Kami, Father, nasa media ministry, how can we also protect ourselves from, kasi marami kami mga negatives na laging na-experience na day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Paano namin maproteksyonan yung mga sarili namin from mga openings?
Well, basically, the important thing there is really to be able to, of course, the grace in your soul, devotion, to have a real relationship with the Lord, but also the properties of the sacramentals, and also be able to check, because the devil can attack all our faculties. First, he can only attack our mind by putting thoughts there, but he cannot read our mind, kasi only God can read our mind. He cannot force us to do things. The devil cannot force you to sin. He can only tempt you. Kaya yung possessed person, tulog yan. Now, but our lower faculties, our faculties that we share with the animals, he can manipulate. For example, yung emotions natin. Kapag meron kang medyo unforgiveness dyan, he can easily make you suddenly trigger that, biglang galit na galit kayo. Bakit? Kaya maraming manic-depressed na yan. Or he can trigger always, meron kang unforgiveness, he can trigger your memory or your imagination. He can see what you're imagining. That's why in exorcisms, when I do an exorcism, I'm blank because I know that the devil can read me. He can know what I'm imagining, he can know what I'm feeling, he can sense immediately what I'm feeling. And he knows if I'm trying to remember something. He doesn't know what I'm praying in my mind, what I'm praying, but he can actually, when he sees a weakness in the lower faculties, then he attacks. So I've had experiences when talagang when I was younger pa. The devil read me immediately when I was afraid or was imagining something, and he used that against me. So I trained myself to always be blank. Because I even had one case na talagang natrap ako doon sa lahat ng Blessed Sacrament Chapel, and the woman started to under it. And nakita, I was blank. Parang blank ko yung mukha. I was totally not reacting in anything. Manhid yung mukha. And there was nothing in my emotions or my imagination or memory. So biglang nakita ng demon, no effect. Robot.
Stoic.
Stoic,
na lang.
Because I know how the devil, so nakita niya, so she again fix herself up. Then I opened immediately the door and may CCTV kami because you can make a story, that's why we also have CCTV. So that it's clear that we didn't do anything to them, and that if we pray over them, we just put our hands over their heads. We don't touch any part of the person's body. If pag babae yan, we usually have a lay person, isang babae who is the one who maybe, Father, dito sumasakit yung dito. Then the lay person puts the oil here. Or if it's I told the exorcist, if you have to touch a part of the woman's body, for example, hinaras yung dito, yung braso, then just use the crucifixes, put it there. But your hand should always be only in the head of the person, and not any other place.
Okay.
So the lay person, basically, I also check the motivations. Later on, if he's starting on, how is his spiritual life, or is he growing in the spiritual life? It should assist him in his primary vocations, becoming a better father, a better husband. So it should also help the person become holy. Right? So that's another thing that I check. I make sure that it doesn't hinder your primary vocation. Because a ministry is supposed to make you holier. Me as a priest, make me holier as a priest. If you're a lay person, maybe you should become a better husband or a father, or a wife or a mother.
Do you actively recruit, Father, or
No,
do you
we
just
don't.
wait for?
I just wait
It's
for
a
the
calling,
Lord to say,
huh?
Yeah, I just wait. Now, my cases na, they were talagang iba-iba. Some were possessed, some were blind na, totally blind. And then, after the demon was expelled, suddenly they could see already. Some were totally possessed, some were physically, yung isa dyan, talagang 10 years bedridden. Then, after the demons left, now she's here.
They couldn't diagnose what was wrong with her.
That's why she entered the new age, because nothing could help her. And they went into a haunted house, and she was not protected. Okay, so because she had a lot of parang negativity pala sa kanyang heart, and also she had many occult
Experiences.
in the family line, marami occult practices in family line.
Really.
Father, will you sign it?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Seminar na to.
Salamat, Father. Thank
That was,
you.
I promised us only 30 minutes and he gets
Yeah,
it.
salamat.
I knew it. And I told them my team go ahead because
This is my name.
okay.
I'll give you a list of our names, Father, just in case you know.
Nasa
Romanin mo.
Rowena. Apelido ni Mawang.
Capistrano mo.
Capistrano. Just
Okay, so Max pa.
Father, I read all your books in a span of like a month. When I realized this conference was coming, I had no idea what this was.
Okay, so
You have a very clear. You had no. It's fascinating. It's scary. I came to a point that I will not read this in the evening. It's scarier than a movie because it's really scary. It's
I read now.
EILEEN.
Father,
EIL.
may books ba sa taas?
I don't know.
In the front,
I-
or just outside it.
IL.
EILEEN.
What does it mean?
EILEEN. But they say that's the Irish version.
What did you ask me?
Double E.
Double EN. The introduction is one of the very good. The introduction of that is a very good. It's a primer. The intro of that is only 250 pesos. Get it?
I used kasi to write, I love reading novels,
Ano
so
You have a very clear, Father. Your style is very effective,
Oh, thank you.
very clear, very direct. No cheche boreche. Very impactful. Whoever edited it did a pretty good job.
Okay. You were forced to read it.
No. I voluntarily read it, and I started looking for all the other books.
Okay.
Check it out.
We're coming out. We also came out with yung Exorcist files.
Cases?
Meron lumabas. It's the cases from different exorcists. that we have trained Pache. It's actually a Pache
Medyo
book.
scary, but necessary reading.
Because actually, I always tell people, if the Lord allowed the devil, He did not eradicate the demons when the demons lost during the crucifixion and the resurrection of the Lord.
Yeah, no?
That means, and that the Lord did not remove suffering from our world. Therefore, suffering and the demons are part of our way towards holiness. We just have to know how to respond to them, just like the cross. We have to know how to carry the cross and how to love the cross. With the demons, if the Lord allowed them still to continue in our world and act
They're there
on
for
us,
our lesson.
and means they're for our sanctification. We just have to learn how to understand their role in our salvation and be able to respond in the way that Christ responded to the devil. And then it is a means by which we can actually move towards become more purified and move closer to the Lord. There's always a reason. That's why I said, no. It's just like when with the cross, you have to understand it in order to maximize its potential to allow us to become holy.